Hey guys, it's Maria with Meet Me at Zero. Welcome back, and thank you for those of you who have liked, shared, subscribed, commented on my page. For those of you that pray, I thank you for the love, the support, for the messages I receive, that you are encouraged, that you relate. And I will finish my adult parenting series. I really am. But right now, I want to share about my trip. And then next week, I think I'm going to do a video on hospice just because the need for volunteers is so great. And so I have a list of about 10 ladies who are interested. And I'm hoping that 2 or 3 guys become available. And so I'm just praying that somebody will be touched. If you have 2 hours every 2 weeks to visit and sit with someone, that will be awesome. And so I went to Puerto Rico last on the 25th on Wednesday, flying out of Charleston to Atlanta. And I sat next to Greg on the left, and him and I had the best conversation about faith, culture, what's going on in Puerto Rico. He goes to Puerto Rico often, knows the area well. Heck, he knows the language well. And so he was slanging and telling me, the typical "Mira, nena," and just talking about going to South America. He had just gotten back recently with his son from Guatemala, where he went to help build homes. And so got off that flight. It was refreshing just to talk to someone. The lady on the right was an older lady, and we talked probably the last few minutes of the flight, and it was more about dogs. She has a daughter that loves dogs like I do and rescues a lot of dogs, and I was telling her, I showed pictures of Bella, and that was that conversation. And so then I had a layover, about 3 hours in Atlanta, so I ate and did my thing. And so then I headed to the gate area, and I noticed 2 guys, and they were a little rowdy, and they had a little group around them, and they were having these conversations. And if you know younger people, they tend to be a little louder than usual. So we're trying to get into the plane, and I have my ticket, and so I get to my row, and I see there's 2 guys, and 2 guys, there's a white lady in the end, and it's packed. My seat is taken. So the stewardess come over, and she said, one of you have to move because B is her chair, which I was supposed to be in the middle. And so one of the guys moves over to the other row. And in the process, he was excited, celebrating. He was going home after 15 years because he's been locked up. And so I think that for most people, it's automatic that your red flag or your wall goes up and you're thinking the worst of this person. And so we sat down, and the man across kind of looked over, and basically the conversation was to the lady, if you want to sit over here, he can sit over there. And so they both ended up sitting next to me. The one sitting right next to me, because I ended up on the window, was the chatty, and so he was going a mile a minute. He was telling me about everything. He hasn't seen his mom in 15 years, that he had a child that was 3 when he was locked up, so now he has a teenager. He was calling me Missy mucho. Missy, pero así se visten las nenas hoy en día. And he was saying, basically, Missy, kind of saying, ma'am, girls dress like that nowadays. And so he explained that he had been locked up for 10 years. He was looking at about 30-year sentence in federal prison. He was sentenced in Puerto Rico and was transferred out to Mississippi, that he had taken 3 flights that day to get to Puerto Rico. Super excited to get to the island to eat all the food. He had a phone as of the day before, but it was taken when he left the prison, the federal prison. He had a debit card that he had not yet activated, and they gave him a little bit of cash only. That his flights were one after the other, so I can't even imagine. I take 2 flights and I'm exhausted, and the English was a little broken up. And so he was going a mile a minute, telling me he finished his GED. He was trying to show me all the tattoos he had in his body. And so he asked me if I was scared of him, and I said no. And so he said that, he can perceive that people look at him in a certain way because he has all these tattoos. And I didn't really want to tell him that it was because more than the tattoos, it was more of his tone, um, sharing that he was just a free man. And so I can understand him being excited to go home after being locked up for 10 years, um, and sad in a way that he has not seen his mom in 15. And so I try to talk to him and encourage him. He finished his GED, and I said, you can do so much better. There are opportunities. I told him to find a church that would mentor him into finding work, legal, dignified work. And so he said that he was going to try to do better, that he was going to settle down. And, we just I never told him that I used to work in law enforcement, and I didn't feel the need to even go there. And so at one point he seemed like he was kind of flirting and saying that I smell good and this, that, and the other. And so I said, honey, I could be your mom. And he's like, well, you don't look like my mom. It doesn't negate that you still look pretty. And so I told him I appreciate the compliment. And then he looked at me. He said, are you really that age? And I was like, yeah. He said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because you look fantastic and you seem to be a great person. And so the one that was chatty, he ended up going to the bathroom, and got distracted in the back talking to someone else. And so the one that was left was the more quiet one, and he's the one that looked black. And so he was also excited to be home. He met the other one. He did 8 years in prison, basically the same thing. And more quiet, very excited to come home. He said he missed the family, the food, and just couldn't wait. And so, to all of this, everybody's paying attention because they're not being necessarily, they don't talk in an inside voice. They were, a little rowdy. And the lady came with the cart and the food. And so he asked for a sandwich, and she gave him the sandwich in this bag. And then she said she couldn't take cash. And so it was like $12 for the sandwich, or whatever he ordered. It was $12. And I think he got fruit and something. And so he said he didn't have a card. And so he asked the lady, do I have to give you my sandwich back? And she said yes. And so my heart just, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother. And I was like, boy. And so I told her, I said, I got it. And so she looked at me and she says, you're going to pay for it? And I said, yeah. And so I asked him if he wanted anything else. He said no. And the people across were looking. I can tell the people in the back were looking. And so I paid for it. And he said thank you twice. And he ate everything in that sandwich. There wasn't a crumb left. And he tried to pay me with the cash he had. And I said no, that would be my gift to him. And that I just wanted him to save his money and to do well in life. And so we just had, we didn't really go into more deep conversation. But when the flight was over, he thanked me. And the stewardess had given him some extra cookies and he wanted to share those. And the whole time that I had and just thinking, I felt, and I analyze a lot. I just sit back and watch at people. Saying I'm a Christian and acting like a Christian are two different things. We were called to minister to the hurt, take care of the widows, Somebody's hungry, you feed them. And sometimes I feel that some of us think that we should continue punishing people that do their time. So when somebody gets sentenced for 10 years, they completed their sentence. We don't get to re-sentence them when they come out. So I have a hard time thinking that we should send people to prison and not do anything for them in 10 years and then expect them to come out in 10 years. Now, 10 years now is not 10 years 50 years ago. 10 years from now, just technology-wise, they're lost. But we want them to leave prison and come to society and act normal, but we will not give them the opportunity, the chance. We immediately judge them. We immediately see them as nothing. We immediately, and I get that I'm not going to give them my key to my car or my house. I get all of that. But the simpleness of being kind in the moment, the humanity portion, the sympathy, for me, it's about, thinking instantly. I think of my kids. I think of my grandchild. If this was my sibling, how would I want this person to be treated? Or what would I want somebody to tell them? And so I'm just thankful that God is so awesome in my life and changed me in such a way, because it's not always been this way. I used to be a hard ass. I used to be very judgmental, and it's a combination of my very conservative, legalistic belief system that I grew up in, and then, I was in law enforcement, and we have to really watch our egos because we feel sometimes that we're above, that we're better than, that we are, and just in life in general, sometimes we feel like because we have certain material things, we are above something, and we're not. We are all touched by pain. We are all touched by grief. We're all touched by sickness. And nobody's exempt. Nobody rides for free. Everybody has a story. And so I was sharing with him, with a young kid at one point, I said, you can reach people where I can't. Stuff that I'm never going to live through. And I said, use that in your benefit. Stay on the good path. Search for people that encourage you, that give you life, that push you through to do good things, not the bad things. Because it will be so easy for him to drift back to the old life, because it's what he knows, and because normal people will not give him the opportunity to do better. And so in this day and age, I really have to pray that God continues to keep my heart receptive to do what's right. Not necessarily what's easy, but what's right. What would Jesus do? What are we here for? Sometimes I feel like we want this world to work a certain way, but we're not willing to do our part to make the world run in a certain way. And so that was part of my trip getting to Puerto Rico. Getting to Puerto Rico it's always a very humbling experience, because when people speak of poor and poverty, I don't even think they understand. I was telling Greg, I said, I think that many Americans need to go to another country to see how people actually live before they talk or make an assessment as to how some things affect certain people. Everybody doesn't have anything, isn't lazy. Opportunities don't come to everyone. Sometimes you have to really push and make your own opportunities. And I can talk and vouch for myself. Everybody isn't strong enough to make and forge a way through. Some people need more help than other people. And so I always pray that God keeps my heart intact and my thoughts clean. And it's a daily process that I journey, because we get lost in listening to a lot of foolishness on a regular basis. But going home was very humbling. I'm always blessed to see my family, but going back to my home where I have no AC, there's no water heater, we barely have any water pressure. It was very hot. It brings me It brings me to my foundation, to my solid foundation, my values, my core values of who I am as a person. And so, how far I've come. And so, I am still compassionate and I still care about other people. And I don't judge people necessarily by what they have, because, listen, sometimes we see people have stuff and we have no idea how much they sacrifice to get that. Because the reality is, some of us are not willing to do the work. We like what we see, we just don't do it. As for me, I know because I grew up poor, dirt poor. And, I don't have the experience that many people have where their parents bought them a car, parents co-signed, parents bought phones. My parents didn't buy me jack. Jack. My parents didn't buy me a cell phone. My parents have never paid my rent. My parents have never paid anything. And so that's a blessing in disguise. That was for me. That was my push to do better, to get out, to want more, to be ambitious, to work hard. My work ethic, my values, my foundation, solid, came from my parents, from that very humble beginning. Respect for life, for the things that are from above. And so I was ready to come home. I was missing my dog. If y'all know me, I was missing Bella. And it was just a great time taking my dad to places he hadn't been in, just to see family and have deep conversations about our upbringing and about faith. I'm always saddened when I leave. There's no place like home. And then we had a intense 24 hours trying to get our tails back home. And so the day of our flight, we went to my childhood best friend, and she had cooked. And of course, I was like, "Don't cook. We just want coffee. We can't stay too long. We're headed to the airport." And God is so merciful that she cooked this delicious meal, and that me, my dad, and my niece ate, because that was the only meal we were gonna have in 24 hours, y'all. So we get to Puerto Rico. We get there early to begin with. We were there probably at 2:30. Our flight wasn't until like 6:20. My dad was stressed out, so we left to the airport early. And we get there and it's delayed. And I'm thankful that we ate, because everything at the airport was like $5. We did have coffee, charge our phones. We get on this plane and I'm having slight anxiety because we only have about 30 to 40 minutes in between flights to get to the next plane. We're going to Fort Lauderdale, which is a disgusting airport. I will try not to fly through there. So we get on this plane and we're headed there. We missed the gate by a hair. They changed the gate on us. The email was sent, and if you ever fly, you don't have any Wi-Fi service. So we didn't get the gate information until late. 9 of us missed our flight to South Carolina. So thank God my brother handled that. My niece and I are hysterical, laughing like nut houses. Finally, JetBlue said, "We're going to fly you from Fort Lauderdale to Jacksonville. And in Jacksonville, they will pay a taxi to bring us to Charleston." And we didn't get here till 6 o'clock that morning. So we were on the go since that morning. When we got in Puerto Rico, we got up early. We went to see my aunt. We went to town. We went to see my best friend. We got to the airport early. And so we finally made it home. And my dad says, while we're in the van on the way back, he says, "You know what? La luz de adelante es la que alumbra." And so he meant to say, basically, the light up front is the one that leads the way. And it did, because we ate. Basically, he was implying that we did go ahead and eat at my friend's house. We would have been starving. And so we got in here on time at 6 because my brother had to be at a graduation at 9 o'clock. And even though it was crazy and intense, this will be a memory that we will have imprinted and we will talk about and laugh about for years to come. We took awesome trips with the family that at one point I thought I was at Carowinds because they were terrifying. I posted a lot of the videos on Facebook. But I just want to finish up with Everything in life happens for a reason, in a particular order, and sometimes we don't understand it. But there's a lesson to be learned in everything we go through. Some lessons are painful. Some lessons are deep and reflective. They're more about self-check. And I find that I have to constantly make sure that I don't get lost in the norm of the world of a constant bombardment of negative information. I just choose not to discuss certain things. And if it's something you want to talk about or something I feel passionately about, I'm going to go ahead and make a post or write about it. But I feel that to serve my higher purpose, I have to stay connected to God, and I have to be true to myself and look at the light in any situation, because it's easy to draw to the negative versus to find the silver lining as to what is, instead of like, why is this happening to me? What am I supposed to learn from this experience? And yes, I get frustrated, I get angry, I get passionate, I cry. If you see me crying, run. I laugh. We were exhausted from traveling. And we finally got to the van and finally got home, and I got home, and I thank God for everything that I have. Beautiful home, my car, more importantly, my sweet dog, who was so happy to see me. She had a little depression while I was gone. I thank God for peace of mind. I thank God for joy. I thank God that I can lay at night and sleep well. I thank God that I am not success driven, but that I just want to make sure that I am getting it right and not having to question that I'm doing things out of a wrong place. So meet me at Zero next week. I hope you have a mighty week, that you encourage someone, pay attention to your surroundings to see what is your assignment. We're all here for a purpose, for a reason. If you don't know what your passion is, and if you have not found your purpose, I encourage you to seek higher, to surround yourself with people that are thriving, that have light. And you have a mighty week. Talk to you later. Bye.